He sat alone at the small metal table near the window, watching ships pass slowly across the glowing sky outside the orbital colony. Elias Carter liked quiet places. He liked routines that didn't change and work that didn't involve too many people. Most days, that meant repairing communication devices for residents who didn't understand how fragile long-distance signals could be in deep space. It wasn't exciting, but it was steady, and steady felt safe. The colony itself was never truly quiet. Thousands of different species lived there under a shared agreement, and every corridor carried unfamiliar voices, strange scents and colors that Earth had never known. Humans were still new to this part of the galaxy. Some aliens found them interesting. Others kept their distance. Humans had a reputation for being emotional, unpredictable, and strangely loyal. Elias had heard all the rumors, but he didn't think much about them. He just wanted to finish his work and return to his apartment without trouble. He had moved into the new residential sector only 2 weeks ago. The building was modern and efficient, with wide hallways and transparent walls that showed the stars outside. Most of the residents were not human. Elias didn't mind. In fact, he preferred it because alien neighbors tended to keep to themselves. Or at least most of them did. One neighbor caught his attention from the beginning. She lived directly across the corridor from him. Tall and graceful, with calm movements that seemed almost too precise, she was unlike anyone he had met before. Her name, according to the building registry, was Lyra. Her species was known for being reserved and diplomatic, rarely engaging in casual conversation. Whenever they crossed paths, she would offer a polite nod and continue walking without hesitation. At first, Elias assumed she simply wasn't interested in talking. That suited him fine. But over time, he noticed small details. She observed everything carefully. Her eyes lingered on human objects longer than on anything else. Once, he caught her studying the old Earth poster hanging inside his doorway, a faded image of mountains and blue sky. She didn't say anything, but there was curiosity in her expression. Work kept Elias busy. That day had been especially long. A communications tower had malfunctioned, causing signal delays across several districts. Angry residents filled his schedule, each demanding immediate solutions. By the time he returned home, his shoulders ached and his thoughts felt heavy. He dropped his tool bag near the couch and sat down with a tired sigh. The room was simple: a small kitchen, a couch, a work desk filled with spare parts, and shelves holding a few personal items from Earth. He picked up his handheld communicator, intending to send a message to his coworker about grabbing dinner later. His fingers moved automatically, while his mind wandered elsewhere. He typed quickly, "Come to my place." Before sending a second message explaining the plan, he pressed transmit without thinking. A moment later, he realized something was wrong. The name on the screen wasn't his coworker's. It was Lyra. His stomach dropped. He stared at the message, hoping he had imagined it. Maybe the system had glitched. Maybe it hadn't actually sent. Then the confirmation indicator appeared. Delivered. Elias sat frozen for a second before quickly typing another message. "Sorry, wrong person." That message was meant for someone else. He hovered over the send button, feeling embarrassed. He didn't want to make things awkward with a neighbor who clearly valued privacy. Before he could press send, the door chime rang. The sound echoed through the small apartment, sharp and clear. He stood slowly, unsure if he wanted to open the door. Maybe it was a delivery drone or maintenance request, but something told him he already knew. When the door slid open, Lyra stood there calmly. She looked exactly as she always did, composed, still, and observant. Her posture was formal, almost ceremonial. She inclined her head slightly, as if acknowledging an agreement already made. "You invited me," she said gently. Elias blinked. I think there was a mistake." She tilted her head slightly, studying him.
Humans often say invitations casually. I understand this difference.
"However, I received your message." and came immediately. Only calm certainty. Elias rubbed the back of his neck, awkwardly. Yeah, I meant to send that to someone else. I'm really sorry if it caused confusion. Lyra paused for a moment, considering his words. Instead of leaving, she remained where she was, as if waiting for clarification. May I enter? She asked. The question caught him off guard. Even though the invitation had been accidental, refusing her now felt strangely rude. Sure, come in. She walked inside slowly, eyes moving across the room with quiet interest. Every object seemed to hold meaning for her. She stopped near the shelves filled with small human items, a worn book, a coffee mug with a faded logo, a small carved figurine. For my people, she said softly. Entering a private space after an invitation is a sign of trust.
Elias felt a little nervous.
Humans don't always think that deeply about it. Sometimes we just say things. She nodded, absorbing the information without judgment. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. Elias moved toward the kitchen area, unsure what to do next. Offering food felt like the most natural human response. Do you eat? He asked. Lyra's eyes brightened slightly. I am able to consume certain human meals. If you are willing to share, it would be appreciated.
He prepared something simple, heated vegetables, bread, and a warm drink. She watched carefully, asking questions about every step.
Why did humans cook instead of relying solely on automated systems? Why did they choose flavors that were unpredictable? Why did they eat together instead of separately? Elias answered as best as he could, sometimes laughing at himself when he realized how strange human habits sounded when explained aloud. The conversation flowed easily, despite their differences. Lyra listened with focused attention, occasionally sharing small details about her own culture. Her people valued logic above emotion. Relationships developed slowly and required clear agreements. Casual invitations rarely existed. So when you received my message, Elias said, you thought it was serious?
Yes, she replied simply.
It indicated a willingness to share personal space. That is significant. He felt slightly embarrassed, but also curious. And you came anyway, even knowing humans might mean it casually. She met his gaze. I wish to learn. Elias noticed that she mimicked some of his gestures, observing how he held utensils or tasted food. Her curiosity felt genuine rather than intrusive. Time passed quickly. Before he realized it, they were talking about Earth, oceans, rainstorms, and the feeling of wind. Lyra seemed fascinated by descriptions of unpredictable weather and emotional reactions. Humans appear to embrace uncertainty, she said thoughtfully. Sometimes we don't have a choice, Elias replied with a small smile. Outside the window, ships continued moving through space like slow streams of light. Inside the apartment, the atmosphere felt warmer than before. When Lyra finally stood to leave, she paused near the door. Thank you for your invitation, she said. Elias hesitated before answering. Even if it was accidental? She gave a small, thoughtful smile. Accidents can still create meaning. After she left, Elias leaned against the wall, replaying the evening in his mind. What started as a mistake had turned into something unexpectedly comfortable. What he didn't know was that the building's interspecies monitoring system had recorded the interaction. In a colony where certain species rarely formed personal connections, a human inviting one of Lyra's kind into private space was unusual enough to attract quiet attention. Far away, unseen observers began to take interest, and Elias, unaware of any of this, simply cleaned the dishes and prepared for another ordinary day, not realizing that one accidental message had already begun changing the course of his life. The next morning felt almost normal to Elias, but something inside him had shifted. He woke earlier than usual, staring at the ceiling while thinking about the unexpected visit from Lyra. He wasn't used to having guests, especially not alien neighbors, who treated simple invitations as meaningful events. Part of him wondered if she would avoid him now, after realizing the message had been accidental. Another part of him hoped she wouldn't. He prepared a simple breakfast and checked his communicator. There were several work notifications and maintenance requests waiting for him, but one message stood out. It was from Lyra. "Thank you again for your hospitality. I will wait for future invitations." The wording made him smile slightly. It sounded formal, but he sensed sincerity behind it. He typed a quick response. "You're welcome. And you don't always have to wait for an invitation to say hello." He hesitated before sending it, unsure if that crossed some cultural boundary. Still, he pressed send. At work, the colony felt busier than usual. Several alien technicians greeted him politely, more than normal. Some watched him with curious expressions. Elias assumed it was just his imagination, but the attention made him slightly uncomfortable. His supervisor handed him a new assignment involving a communications relay near the central plaza. While working, Elias overheard two residents discussing something about a human forming an unusual connection. He ignored it at first, assuming it wasn't about him. Humans often attracted curiosity. Later, while repairing a damaged transmitter, he received another message from Lyra. "May I observe your work today?" He paused. Most residents didn't care about technical repairs. "Sure," he replied. "If you don't mind it being boring." "I do not find human activity boring," she answered almost immediately. She arrived shortly after, standing quietly beside him as he worked. Her presence felt calm, not distracting. She asked thoughtful questions about how signals traveled across space and why humans preferred manual adjustments instead of fully automated solutions. "Automation is faster," she said. "Sometimes," Elias replied, "but manual work lets you feel when something is wrong. Hard to explain. Humans trust instincts." She nodded slowly, absorbing his words. "Your species often values intuition." "Yeah," he said with a small laugh. "Sometimes too much." They spent most of the day together. Elias noticed that other workers watched them, whispering quietly. He felt slightly awkward, but tried to focus on his tasks. Lyra didn't seem bothered by the attention. During a break, they sat near the plaza, where different species gathered for meals. Music played softly from nearby speakers. Humans laughed loudly at one table, while a group of alien traders exchanged goods nearby. Lyra watched everything with fascination. "Humans display emotion openly," she said. "Many species limit such expression in public." "Life feels easier when you share things." She considered this carefully. Sharing emotions appears to strengthen bonds quickly. "Yeah," he said, sometimes too quickly. She turned toward him. "Does that concern you?" "Not always, but sometimes people misunderstand intentions." Lyra seemed to understand more than he expected. "You worry that others misinterpret our interactions."
He sighed quietly. "I guess so." She was silent for a moment before speaking again.
"For my people, relationships develop slowly. However, I chose to accept your invitation because I sensed sincerity. That remains unchanged." Her words felt reassuring. As days passed, their meetings became more frequent. Lyra visited his apartment occasionally, always confirming beforehand. They shared meals, conversations, and small moments of quiet observation. Elias introduced her to human entertainment. Old Earth films, simple games, and stories about childhood experiences. She listened with deep attention, often asking why humans laughed during certain scenes, or why sadness could coexist with happiness. Elias realized he had never truly analyzed these things before. Meanwhile, subtle changes occurred around them. Some residents greeted Elias more warmly, while others kept their distance. A few aliens approached him with strange questions about human emotional influence. He brushed them off, confused by the sudden interest. One evening, while returning home, he noticed two unfamiliar figures standing near the entrance to his building. They watched him carefully before walking away. The encounter left him uneasy. Inside his apartment, Lyra was already waiting. She stood near the window, looking thoughtful. "You seem troubled," she said gently. "Just tired," he replied, though he wasn't entirely sure. She hesitated before speaking again. "There has been discussion among diplomatic circles regarding our interactions." Elias felt his stomach tighten. "Is that bad?" "It is unusual," she said carefully. "My species rarely forms close connections with humans. Some observers believe your influence may be strategic." He laughed nervously. "Strategic? I barely remembered to clean my kitchen."
Lyra's expression softened slightly.
"I am aware. However, not all share my perspective."
They sat together in silence for a moment. "Do you want to stop meeting?" he asked quietly.
She looked at him directly. "Do you?" "No," he admitted. "Then neither do I," she said simply. Her answer relieved him more than he expected. A few days later, the colony hosted a large festival celebrating unity among species. Lights filled the sky, and music echoed through the streets. Elias wasn't planning to attend, but Lyra asked if he would accompany her. He agreed. The festival overwhelmed the senses. Different species showcased their traditions: dancing, storytelling, and displays of art. Humans gathered around food stands, laughing loudly and inviting strangers to join them. Lyra stayed close to Elias, observing everything carefully. At one point, a group of humans invited her to try a dance. She hesitated but accepted, moving carefully at first before relaxing slightly. Elias watched with amusement. She looked different, less formal, more curious. "Humans celebrate even without clear objectives," she said afterward. "That's kind of the point," he replied. As they walked through the crowd, several diplomatic observers approached them. Their questions felt polite, but probing. They asked about the nature of their relationship, how often they met, and what they discussed. Elias felt uncomfortable being treated like a subject of study. Lyra answered calmly, maintaining dignity while avoiding unnecessary detail. Afterward, they moved to a quieter area overlooking the colony lights. "I did not anticipate this level of attention," she admitted. "Me neither," Elias said. She looked thoughtful. "Your species has a unique effect. Humans create connections rapidly, which challenges established norms." He shrugged. "We just talk to people." She turned toward him with a small smile. "That simplicity may be your greatest strength." As the festival ended, Elias realized that their friendship had grown beyond an accidental meeting. There was trust now, built through shared moments and honest conversations. But somewhere in the background, unseen observers continued to monitor their interactions. Some viewed their bond as hopeful. Others saw potential risk. Elias, however, focused only on the present. Walking beside his alien neighbor under the glowing lights, unaware that their growing connection was slowly reshaping how the colony viewed humans and their place among the stars. Elias woke early again, the colony's artificial sunlight spilling softly across his small apartment. He felt a strange mix of anticipation and anxiety, though he couldn't quite explain why. His days had become unpredictable ever since Lyra began visiting regularly. What started as a simple accidental message had turned into a series of meetings that seemed to pull him out of the quiet life he once preferred. He rubbed his eyes, listening to the soft hum of the ventilation system, and thought about the tasks ahead. Today, he would have to repair an important communications hub near the central command sector, a job usually done by a team, but for some reason, his supervisor had sent him alone. By mid-morning, Elias had gathered his tools and boarded the transit tube that carried him through the spinning corridors of the colony. The hub was situated on a high platform overlooking the city-like structure below. It was a critical node, controlling signals between several residential districts, and failure could create delays across the colony's networks. As he approached the control panel, he noticed something unusual. Several lights were blinking red, indicating multiple system errors. The hub had been neglected, and Elias could feel the weight of responsibility pressing against him. He activated the diagnostic sequence and began working on the first set of issues. Sparks of frustration and concentration filled his mind as he replaced faulty modules and recalibrated the signal emitters. The hum of energy fields and the mechanical clicks of the machinery were almost comforting, a rhythm he had grown accustomed to. Suddenly, a familiar voice spoke behind him. "May I observe?" Lyra stepped carefully into the work area, her long limbs moving with grace. Her presence was calm but commanding, drawing his attention immediately. Elias jumped slightly. "Oh!"
"You're here already. I didn't expect anyone."
"I wish to see how humans address challenges," she said. Her tone was precise but friendly. "Your species appears capable of adapting to sudden problems efficiently." Elias laughed nervously. "Well, we try."
"Sometimes it's more improvisation than efficiency." She nodded, slowly, leaning over slightly to observe his work. Her eyes, luminous and thoughtful, followed every movement. She asked questions that challenged him to articulate what he was doing in a way that made sense to her species. "Why did you adjust this module manually instead of allowing the automated system to handle it?" she asked. "Because automated systems don't always notice subtle issues," Elias explained. "A human can feel when something's off. We call it intuition." Lyra processed this carefully. Intuition, a form of analysis not dependent on predictable outcomes. Your species trusts it, even when logic alone would suffice.
"Exactly," he said, impressed that she understood so quickly. Time passed in steady rhythm.
The hub's problems were complex, requiring adjustments that tested his skill and patience. Meanwhile, Lyra watched without interrupting unnecessarily, though her presence added an unexpected pressure. Elias found himself explaining his thoughts aloud more than he normally would. It was as though her attention demanded clarity, and he didn't mind it. By late afternoon, the hub was stable again. The blinking red lights disappeared, replaced by steady green indicators. Elias wiped sweat from his brow and allowed himself to lean back for a moment. "You performed exceptionally," Lyra said softly, stepping closer. "Your species possesses a resilience not solely dependent on technology." Elias felt a warmth spread across his chest.
"I just do what needs to be done."
She studied him for a long moment, then turned her gaze toward the city below. "Your actions demonstrate something I have observed frequently in humans: cooperation without expectation. You coordinate with others to achieve goals, even when personal gain is minimal." Elias nodded slowly. "That's important for us, even if it's small. Helping others matters." Lyra remained silent for a moment, then spoke with quiet determination. "I have begun to understand human values more deeply because of our interactions. Observation alone could not teach me this practice." "You mean my company?" "Yes," she said simply. "Yes," she said simply.
"Spending time with you has provided insights that data alone cannot offer. I did not anticipate the depth of understanding I would gain."
The sun outside began to dim, artificial evening spreading across the colony. Elias glanced at his communicator and saw multiple notifications. The board in Central Command had requested a report on the hub status. He typed a brief summary and sent it quickly. Lyra watched him work. "You adapt to external expectations while maintaining internal standards," she observed. "This is rare. Most beings focus on rules or procedure without considering broader consequences." Elias paused, thinking about her words.
I guess humans just look at the bigger picture sometimes.
Maybe because life is unpredictable. Her gaze met his.
"You embrace unpredictability. That appears to give your species strength. For the first time, Elias felt that their relationship had evolved beyond simple curiosity.
Lyra was not just observing him. She was learning from him, reflecting on human qualities, and integrating those insights into her understanding of her own species. It was an experience unlike anything he had imagined. As they left the hub, Elias offered to escort her back to her quarters. She agreed, moving beside him with the same calm grace. Along the way, other residents noticed their presence. Whispers of curiosity trailed them through corridors. Some speculated about the nature of their connection. Elias tried to ignore it, but he felt a subtle tension in the air, as though their bond had become a topic of observation for the entire colony. At her quarters, Lyra paused before entering.
"I am aware that others are paying attention," she said softly. "Your species has the ability to influence perception rapidly. Even small gestures create ripples."
Elias frowned slightly. "I don't want to cause trouble." "You do not," she reassured him.
"Your actions are genuine. That is what matters most." She gave a small bow before stepping inside her quarters.
Elias lingered for a moment, watching her disappear behind the sliding door. He felt a mixture of relief and concern. Their friendship had grown into something meaningful, but it was no longer simple or private. The next day, Elias returned to his routine, but the colony seemed different. Small signals of recognition followed him. Nods from alien neighbors he had never met, subtle glances from officials, and the occasional whispered discussion overheard in corridors. It was as if the accidental message had drawn attention beyond his comprehension. Despite the pressure, Lyra continued her visits. She arrived at his apartment, often after confirming that the timing was suitable, and together they explored human and alien cultures, shared meals, and exchanged stories of childhood and tradition. She laughed, or the closest equivalent her species had to laughter, at small human quirks and asked profound questions about emotional responses. Elias found himself reflecting more deeply than before. He had always thought humans were too unpredictable, but in reality, their unpredictability allowed connection and understanding that rigid logic could not achieve. Lyra, with her analytical mind, was discovering these truths firsthand, and her presence challenged him to explain, justify, and even rethink aspects of his own behavior. One evening, while sharing a quiet meal, she asked a question that surprised him. "Do you think humans can be trusted universally?" He thought carefully. "I think we try to be, but people make mistakes. We fail sometimes, but even mistakes can teach things." She nodded thoughtfully. Observation alone cannot convey nuance. Experiencing human behavior is necessary to understand it fully. They spoke long into the night, bridging the gap between species with conversation and shared experiences. Each story Elias told, each explanation of human emotion, seemed to draw Lyra closer, not physically, but in understanding and trust. Over the following weeks, their relationship became more complex. Colony residents began speculating about Elias's unusual friendship with an alien of Lyra's standing. Some whispered that humans might manipulate emotional responses for advantage, while others were quietly intrigued by the bridge their interactions represented. Lyra, aware of these undercurrents, remained composed. She made it clear to Elias that their bond was intentional, not accidental, and that she valued his sincerity above all else. One day, a minor system emergency required Elias to coordinate volunteers across multiple districts. The challenge was unexpected and urgent, but he rose to the occasion. Lyra accompanied him, observing his leadership and cooperation skills. She noticed how humans inspired others without formal authority, how Elias's calm demeanor reassured anxious residents, and how his willingness to act created unity across species. The event ended successfully, earning Elias recognition from colony officials. Lyra, however, remained focused on the subtler effects of his actions. "Your presence changes perceptions," she said quietly. "You inspire trust, and that is not a common trait."
Elias laughed softly. "I don't know if it's inspiration, I just try to help."
She studied him for a long moment. Humans often undervalue their abilities. What seems ordinary to you is extraordinary to others. As the sun set over the colony, Elias realized that their accidental meeting had grown into something neither of them could have predicted. Lyra's visits, the shared experiences, the quiet conversations, all of it was transforming not only their understanding of each other, but also the way the colony viewed humans. He looked at the sky, shimmering with lights from distant ships, and thought about how one small mistake, a message sent to the wrong person, had begun a chain of events that would change his life and, perhaps, the lives of everyone around him. For the first time in a long while, Elias felt that being human was not just about survival or routine. It was about connection, trust, and the unpredictable power of simple actions. And with Lyra by his side, he was beginning to understand just how powerful that could be. Their bond had become a quiet revolution, a bridge between species, a lesson in trust, and a story that would ripple through the colony in ways neither Elias nor Lyra could yet foresee. Elias woke to the soft hum of the colony's artificial morning lights, feeling an unusual tension in the air. The previous weeks had been filled with unexpected events, Lyra's regular visits, whispers among other residents, and subtle observations from the colony's officials. What had begun as a casual accident had now grown into a situation he could no longer ignore. He dressed quickly, his thoughts turning to the day ahead, and checked his communicator. Messages from his supervisor awaited him, along with new alerts from the colony network. One of the alerts was marked high priority. A system-wide communications assessment in the central plaza was scheduled. Elias knew this would require cooperation across multiple species, and he would need to act quickly. He left his apartment, tools slung over his shoulder, and walked through the corridors, feeling the eyes of other residents on him. Most gave only polite nods, but the whispers and subtle glances did not escape his notice. Humans were rare enough in this sector, and his growing association with Lyra made him even more unusual. He tried to ignore it, focusing instead on preparing for the tasks ahead. Lyra was already at the plaza when he arrived. She moved among the gathered crowd with calm precision, her posture flawless, her expression composed yet attentive.
As Elias approached, she turned toward him. "The coordination today will test human adaptability," she said.
"Your species demonstrates unexpected efficiency under pressure. I am curious how it will unfold."
He nodded, feeling a mix of nerves and determination. "We'll manage. Humans like to figure things out as we go, even when the situation is complicated." The plaza was crowded with technicians, diplomats, and residents from various species. The communications network had suffered intermittent disruptions, and the colony leaders wanted a real-time demonstration of repair protocols, collaboration, and problem-solving. The task was daunting, but Elias's experience and calm demeanor immediately drew attention. He began delegating tasks, speaking clearly and confidently, despite the noise and complexity of the environment. Aliens from several species hesitated at first, uncertain about human leadership, but Elias's steady guidance encouraged them to participate, Lyra observed quietly, occasionally offering insights on workflow optimization based on her people's methods. She did not interfere, but her presence lent weight to his actions. As the team worked together, minor misunderstandings arose. Different species used varying procedures, languages, and communication styles. Elias adapted, translating instructions, simplifying complex protocols, and demonstrating the necessary steps himself. The others followed his lead, and slowly, the network began to stabilize. Lights on the central panel shifted from blinking red to steady green, signaling restored functionality. Throughout the process, Elias remained composed, but he could feel the weight of scrutiny. Observers from the colony's diplomatic corps monitored every action, taking note of the human's ability to lead and maintain harmony across multiple species. Lyra stayed by his side, noting each adjustment, each decision, and each gesture. After the network returned to full operation, she turned toward him. "Your actions demonstrate qualities rare in any species: leadership, patience, empathy. These are remarkable. Elias laughed softly, brushing sweat from his brow. I'm just doing what I think is right. I didn't expect anyone to notice. Lyra's expression softened. The impact is undeniable. What seems ordinary to you creates extraordinary results. As the crowd dispersed, whispers of admiration and curiosity trailed behind him. Some questioned whether humans were being given undue influence, while others recognized the value of his cooperative approach. Elias felt a mixture of pride and unease. He had never sought attention, but the ripple effects of his actions were undeniable. Later, as the sun cast artificial twilight across the colony, Elias returned to his apartment with Lyra. She had accompanied him, not out of necessity, but out of choice. She moved with her usual grace, her expression calm yet reflective. You handled the situation impressively, she said once they were inside.
You coordinated multiple species without conflict. This is rare.
I guess humans just work together, he said. Even when it's messy, we try to help each other.
She considered his words carefully. Cooperation without expectation of reward. That is what I observed.
It is not common among other species. I have begun to understand why humans are capable of forming bonds so quickly.
Elias smiled faintly. I never thought about it that way. We just do what feels right. Lyra approached the small table in the center of the room, her eyes scanning the familiar surroundings.
Your environment is simple yet functional. It reflects priorities, not extravagance.
Humans achieve balance even in limited space. I like things simple. Makes it easier to focus. They shared a quiet meal, discussing the events of the day and analyzing what had gone well and what could have been improved. The conversation flowed easily, yet beneath the surface, both were aware of the larger implications. Their interactions were no longer private. Colony officials, diplomats, and even casual residents were observing, noting how a human and an alien could collaborate so effectively. As the evening progressed, Lyra spoke of her people and their traditions. In my culture, personal connections are deliberate and controlled. Trust develops slowly through observation and measured interaction.
What has occurred between us defies that pattern.
Elias leaned back, considering her words.
I guess that's because humans are impulsive sometimes. We don't wait.
We act and we adjust.
That impulsiveness has produced trust where none was expected. It challenges long-held assumptions and demonstrates your species' unique strengths.
For a moment, silence settled over the room. Elias felt a sense of wonder and humility. He had always considered himself an ordinary human, navigating an ordinary life. Yet, in Lyra's eyes, he could see that his simple actions carried meaning far beyond his own understanding. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft alert from his communicator. Another system required attention, this one involving a minor energy fluctuation affecting residential sectors. Elias stood, gathering his tools. Lyra followed, offering suggestions based on her species' approach to problem-solving. Together they moved through the colony, addressing issues with calm efficiency. Residents watched as the human and the alien worked side by side, noting the ease of collaboration. By nightfall, the tasks were complete. Elias and Lyra returned to his apartment, both tired but satisfied. The events of the day had reinforced their bond and demonstrated human capability to those who doubted it. Yet the subtle undercurrent of scrutiny remained. Their friendship, once accidental and private, had become a symbol of interspecies cooperation. Sitting quietly, Elias reflected on how far things had come. A simple, unintended message had set in motion a series of events that challenged cultural norms, inspired cooperation, and demonstrated the strength of human connection. Lyra's presence had transformed from curiosity to deliberate companionship, and together they had navigated challenges that neither could have faced alone. Lyra's voice broke the silence. "Elias, your actions today have revealed truths about your species that observation alone could not. Humans possess an ability to unite, to create understanding across differences. That is remarkable."
Elias smiled faintly. I never thought about it like that.
"I just live my life. You live it with purpose whether you intend to or not," she said softly. "That is what others observe and admire. Your simplicity carries weight." As the artificial lights dimmed to simulate night, Elias realized that the accidental message which had started everything was no longer relevant. Their relationship had evolved. It was intentional, meaningful, and powerful in ways that neither of them could have predicted. Outside, the colony continued its quiet hum. Observers took note. Residents whispered, and small ripples of understanding spread. Elias, unaware of the full consequences, prepared for another day, knowing that the world around him had shifted, subtly, but irrevocably, because of simple human connection. Lyra remained by his side, a quiet witness to the unfolding impact. Their bond had become more than friendship. It was a testament to trust, cooperation, and the unexpected strength found in vulnerability. In a universe that valued control and precision, they had discovered the extraordinary power of acting with sincerity.
As night fell fully, Elias looked at the stars through the window and felt a deep sense of purpose.
He realized that humans were more than just survivors in the galaxy. They were bridges, capable of creating understanding where none had existed. And with Lyra by his side, he understood that one small, accidental message had the power to change not only his life, but also the lives of everyone who witnessed the connection it had forged. Their story was no longer about mistakes. It was about trust, courage, and the quiet revolution of human warmth reaching across the stars.